Good morning, it's Lisa with Lisa Heal Yourself, and today I want to talk about fragmentation or dissociation, or when you feel like you're broken, or when you don't know why your life can't get better, when you're chronically ill, when you're faced with a chronic situation, chronic symptoms, chronic illness, chronic situation, right? I want to talk about fragmentation. And this is really all about trauma. So if you've experienced trauma in your life, and trauma can be anything that changes you as a person, that isn't able to resolve itself. So if something happens to you that feels so bad, or something happens to you that feels where you lose trust sort of in yourself or in the universe, where you weren't able to resolve what happened to you because it doesn't fit into your own worldview, your own core values, your own personality, there's no resolution. It feels like your mind, your emotions, your heart, your body, your brain, none of it can make sense of what's happened, and it leaves you feeling unresolved. A lot of times what will happen is a part of you will break off, and this is called fragmentation. And literally a part of you does not break off. But when you're in a traumatic moment and you need to keep living your life, you need to keep surviving, your mind, in essence, will split, okay? This is almost, it's like if you drop a glass and it splits, right? It splits. Maybe it shatters. Maybe it just cracks. But it breaks. It breaks apart because part of you, the scared part, the vulnerable part, the part that's sad, the part that wants to be taken care of, the part that no longer feels safe, the part that feels abandoned, the part that feels, terrified, scared, alone, abandoned, depressed, right? This part of you that feels shamed or that feels that the world is not a safe place. This part of you inside, it feels too vulnerable to admit to the rest of the world that that's how you feel. Or maybe you can't for certain reasons. You're a mom, you have to continue to take care of your kids. You're a man, you have to continue to go to work. You can't wallow in and sit in that terrified, childlike space, right, of fear and grief and sadness and shame and guilt. You must continue on with your life. So there's a second part of you, and it's a real part of you, that is the protector part of you. That is the part that takes charge and takes control of the situation and says, okay, we're going to piece this together. We're going to figure this out. You've got to keep moving for these reasons. You cannot fall apart. You cannot sit in this trauma. You have to keep going forward. And usually it's the stronger part of you, the part that's resilient and wants you to make it and wants you to forget about that and to keep going. It's the part that knows there's a mission, a part that drives you forward. And so there's these two dueling parts or pieces. And this one is stronger, and it's there to protect you. It's there to keep you safe. It's there to keep you moving. It thinks that if it doesn't take over, something even worse will happen. You will fall apart completely. You will mentally break or physically break. You will be unsafe in some way. And so it takes over instinctually, subconsciously. This part that rises up within you says, I'm in control now, right? And this is why sick people often have controlling nature. I'm in control now. I'm going to tell you the way this is going to go. We're going to do this and this and this. And this is the part that keeps you alive, that keeps you surviving. It's the mechanism. It's the fight or flight response. It's the part of you that says, and it doesn't consciously say this, but it's the part of you that takes over and drives your survival, right? We're going to survive. And it leaves this broken part behind. This part that it can no longer look at anymore. It leaves it behind, and this part is left alone, feeling like maybe I'm no good. Maybe people shouldn't feel me. They shouldn't look at me. I shouldn't be spoken of. I need to get smaller. I need to shrink away. So this part over here is kind of left apart. And this is what dissociation is when people dissociate from themselves. And I know I lived with dissociation, was one of my symptoms, and I was completely dissociated from the world and myself for years, for 3 to 4 years, and it was terrible. It was like you're living in a fantasy fog. You couldn't get a grip on reality. I mean, it was torture. But I realized that I had completely dissociated from parts of myself. Right? I literally was broken. I was shattered. A glass on the ground. All the pieces are still there though. Right? They're just not together. The big ones, the pieces that are holding it together, are taking over. And the smaller ones are getting lost, but they're still part of yourself. Right? So when you look in the mirror and you don't know who you are, you can only see a sick, dying person. If you have a chronic illness, you look in the mirror, and I would see like skeletons. I would see this grotesque, ill person looking back at me, and this is just like a dissociation, something that's happening. You're fragmented from parts of yourself and your soul. And so this happens without your knowledge. So it's not like oh yes, I've dissociated or fragmented off from certain parts of me. You don't realize this. You just don't feel whole. You just don't feel complete. You just don't feel resolved. You just don't feel human in some extreme cases, like I did. Some people may just not feel like themselves, or they may just not feel whole. They may have a sense of something being wrong or broken, and then there's other people who feel completely shattered, who feel dissociated from themselves and the world, even from being human or the human race, right? So it can go very deep and very far. So let's get a little bit deeper into, and I mean, there's different terms, different people and different organizations see it differently. So if I was a psychologist or a psychiatrist, I might be talking about fragmentation and dissociation as completely different things, and there's different meanings and different interpretations. But as somebody who's lived through both, I can tell you it's all one and the same. Okay, it's all one and the same thing. Feelings are repressed or suppressed into your subconscious. So feelings that you don't want to think about anymore, feelings that are so vulnerable, feelings or things that are keeping you unsafe, things automatically get suppressed or repressed, and sometimes so deeply, in fact, that people can't even remember memories. Some people can't even remember certain traumatic events. Some people don't remember being sexually abused or abused. They just suppress that so deep that they can't remember it. On another level completely, every baby is weaned off the breast, and most of you will never remember that. It's just suppressed and repressed, right? Women go through childbirth and labor. They may remember the childbirth if you've had a natural birth and it was quite traumatic. But even, they go to have another child, the memory, the feelings of it must be suppressed and repressed in order to go forward. So this is not a conscious thing, and it can be very deep for very hard reasons, and trauma can be much more personal and seeming like it's not true. It wouldn't be. What's traumatic for one person may not be traumatic for somebody else, right? But in essence, parts of your emotions or your thoughts or your feelings or your personality or your view of the world get suppressed, get repressed, get broken off, fragmented, dissociated from your being, from yourself that makes you you, from your soul. So this is fragmentation, this is dissociation, this is suppression, this is repression, this is all of it. And I know different people would argue with me and say they're all different things, but I think they're all the same thing. I know they're all the same thing. I went through all of them. So take it from someone who's lived it. We don't always notice that we're suppressing, repressing, fragmenting, dissociating from parts of ourselves. And because we don't know this, we can't fix it. We can't complete the process. We can't undo the trauma. We can't piece back that vase back together again. We can't repair the cracks, right? Make it whole again, which is really what you want to do. When you're suppressed something, when you've denied it, disowned it, cut it off, pushed it away, dissociated from it, fragmented from yourself, whatever you want to call it, we need to call lovingly those pieces of ourselves back together, back to our being, back to our soul, back to our heart, back into being. Let them know it's safe to come home, to feel them, to look at them. They don't need to feel unsafe, guilted, shamed, scared, sad, whatever. You need to now, as an adult, looking back, you need to be and call back these parts of yourself that you can only do in deep introspection, in meditation, in journaling. There's lots of different ways and methods that you can access these parts, and it's not that hard, right? You just find out where your resistances are showing up in your life and ask yourself why. You find out what a memory or what event keeps popping up into your memory, and that's the one that you need to focus on. You find out what keeps making you sad or what is challenging in your life, and that's where you focus on. So it's not like you need to search back in your past and dig up all these things. These things present in the future. So you are living a healthy, happy, completely fulfilled life if you have resolved your trauma. But if you're still holding on to trauma and parts of you that have been suppressed, repressed, disowned, denied, fragmented, dissociated from, then you will, no doubt, come up against things in your life, in your daily life, that push your buttons. They call these triggers, right? They push, they trigger you. That's it right there. When you come up against a trigger, that is what you need to sit, contemplate, journal about, think about, meditate on, and ask yourself, when was the first time you felt that? What is still unresolved for you? What needs to be called back? What pieces of you are missing, right? What do you need to feel safe and loved? What do you need? What parts of yourself need to feel okay and safe and loved and not abandoned anymore? So I will do some more videos on how to call these things back, but just as a starting point, I wanted to explain fragmentation, explain dissociation, explain repression and suppression, and just talk about the starting place as to why you can't move forward in your life, why you keep coming up against these triggers every day in your daily life, and how we can start to move beyond them. So I hope that this has explained a little bit about it. I hope you've understood it, and I hope you're ready to move to the next video where we start to put ourselves back together. We start to face those feelings that were abandoned and rejected, the parts of yourself that were disowned, the parts of yourself that were left behind, right? That were dissociated from, that were fragmented off, the parts that need to come home to you. So I hope that's helpful, and I'll talk to you in the next video.